Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Full On Football Podcast. I'm Ben, I'm here with my co-host Harry. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, good, mate, really good. Looking forward to this one.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. So this week's episode is about holding midfielders. Can you be a top side in the modern era without a top-class holding midfielder? We don't think you can, and we're going to prove it tonight.
You will struggle to find an example in the last decade of a successful team that didn't have a top holding midfielder. But there are countless examples of top teams that did. We feel like it is a necessity to be successful.
What do we mean by holding midfielder? Now, how I see it is there's two types of holding midfielder, really. So there's the deep-lying playmaker, so you're looking at players like Pirlo and Thiago at Liverpool at the moment, was obviously at Bayern Munich. And then there's the break-up play type of player, so that's more the old-style Makelele, Fabinho, Casemiro, Fernandinho. Now, ultimately, the top-class holding midfielders generally can do both.
Yeah.
That's probably fair. They can do both.
Which is why they're so important.
Oh, mate, integral. Like we said, you will struggle to find a side in the last decade that doesn't have a top-class holding midfielder.
The reason the position has become so important is the recent transition of formations from what was, classically a 4-4-2, everyone played 4-4-2, to now 4-3-3 is, trendy, that's what the top teams do. So there's a need for more specialised roles in the team. 20 years ago, Man United didn't need a holding midfielder because Scholes and Keane did it all. They attacked, they went forward, they scored goals, they did everything.
Yeah, so I mean, the important thing you said there is more about like specialised roles. So generally, as a kid, I was always told, well, what does a midfielder do, Dad? And what he said, well, they do both. They attack and they defend. Whereas now, a defensive midfielder, you're in the side to help with defence. If you score one a season as a defensive midfielder in a side that wins the league, nobody cares.
No.
Nobody cares at all. And then centre midfielder, box-to-box centre midfielders are more of a thing of a past, really. They are still about, don't get me wrong. Blaise Matuidi, I'd argue Jordan Henderson's best position, box-to-box. Gini Wijnaldum, I'd say again. De Bruyne can do it, obviously he goes box-to-box, but naturally more of an attacking midfielder. But generally, in the modern era, you're either more of a attacking midfielder or you're a holding midfielder. But that's the way the modern game's gone.
Although we're stressing the importance of having a good holding midfielder and being a good team, it's only when you're very good at it. You need to be super about the role for it to be effective. Now, I don't want to dig this player out, but for example, Lamina played holding midfield for Bournemouth a lot last season, shipped loads of goals in a 4-3-3, shipped loads of goals. Not on his watch, I'm not blaming him, but he wasn't an effective holding midfielder. Now, he's gone to Fulham this year, and I know he's just signed there. He's only played, it might have only been his first game at the weekend, but you feel like they're going to ship loads of goals, and defensively they look all over the place, so you'd be better off just playing another striker. There's no point having one in there for the sake of it. It's pointless.
Yeah, I think the point you're trying to make there is obviously, unless you're effective at your role is to, as I said, you're either a deep-lying playmaker, you're either going to drop deep, you're probably the best passer in the side, and you're going to get the ball off the centre-backs and make things happen with the ball. So you're the best ball player in the side, or you're in there to break up play.
And you can spot danger.
And that's what you're in there for. You're in there to stop the side leaking goals. It's a matter of balance. That's what this is all about. It's all about balance in the midfield and getting the balance right. And like you said, if you're conceding free a game, playing a holding midfielder, the holding midfielder and say if you've got a back four and a 4-3-3, the back four and the holding midfielder as a collective are not doing their job. You're leaking free a game anyway. You just as well roll the dice and try and score more goals.
Yeah.
Or go to a back five and eliminate the holding midfielder. You've got to try something different because it's not effective playing holding midfielder if you're conceding free a game.
No, and if you're playing in that position, if you are the player just dug out, or one of the holding midfielders for a Watford last season who went down, or a Norwich, you are getting away with murder playing in that position. You're getting off the pitch at the end of the day, and you've I'm the defensive midfielder and we've just lost 5-0. Well, you've clearly had a bad day. What was your job? If you're not keeping things tight, you may as well not be on there.
The reason the position is so important is because they make everybody around them look better, especially the back four. You go back through top sides in the last decade, as we've said, and you'll struggle to see a side that doesn't have a top holding midfielder. And generally, when they don't play with one, you'll see the difference.
Yeah. So this is a slightly, rogue example. This is not a top side, but Manchester United in the last 3 or 4 years have had Nemanja Matic holding midfield, who I'm a massive fan of. I think he's brilliant. You notice the difference when he doesn't play. He is our most important player as far as I'm concerned. We had a couple of good results with him in the team, but ultimately, when he plays, we look better. When he doesn't play, we look a mess. Jose Mourinho said his best achievement was finishing second with Man United. We had a back four of Valencia, Chris Smalling, Phil Jones, and Ashley Young on the whole.
So you had 2 wingers in your back four.
Yeah, two Asian wingers in a back four, and 2 defenders who are no longer at the club, 2-3 years on. Which says it all. Finished second because Matic, I'm not trying to stick the knife into those players, but having Matic in the team, we would not have done that without Matic in that team, Again, Fernandinho in Manchester City, their most important player. I've thought it for three or 4 years. When Fernandinho doesn't play, they look a different team. It's no surprise that they won 2 league titles in a row when he played in that holding role. Let's not forget, Kevin De Bruyne missed most of the season. They finished with 98 points. Kevin De Bruyne is their best player. Is he their most important player? I don't think he is.
No.
And it's no surprise that the last 18 months he hasn't played Fernandinho. He's often playing in defence, that their form is dropped.
Yeah, it's interesting. With Fernandinho, it's almost like he plays in defence and they ship goals, but he plays well. He plays well at centre-back. It's like he needs to be in front of himself, He needs himself in front of himself at defence, They need 2 Fernandinhos almost. It's such an important position. And there's a couple more examples for you. Sergio Ramos at Real Madrid, a player that, and Rafa Varane, the pair of them, but more Ramos, a player that he's a great defender. He's elite. Of course he is. He's a winner. He's a serial winner. But ultimately, had never won the Champions League until the first stint when Xabi Alonso was playing in front of him, holding midfield. And then they won 3 in a row when they had Casemiro playing in front of him.
Yeah.
Up till that point, he always had a mistake in him, Sergio Ramos. Unfair, fair or unfair, whatever you think, he did. He always
100%.
had he might get sent off, he might make a silly mistake. Yeah, he could score a winner from a corner, of course he could, but having Casemiro in front of him, I know that Kroos and Modric get all the credit, but the balance of that midfield with Casemiro there, it revolutionised the side.
Yeah.
Completely revolutionised them. A player that might not be as fashionable as some others. People are saying, they got rid of Mesut Ozil or James Rodriguez, etc. But the balance of a side, bringing Casemiro in, so much improved.
100%. And if you were any illusion that holding midfielders doesn't make the players around them look better, Chelsea won a league title in 2017 under Conte. David Luiz played 38 games at centre-half, but they had Kante and Matic in front of them, and they finished the league season with 94 points.
That says everything you need to know. Hiya guys, welcome back. We're going to start by looking at a few recently successful teams, starting with Inter Milan 2010. So when I think back to that Inter Milan side, obviously a lot of good players in the side, don't get me wrong. Esteban Cambiasso, holding midfielder.
What a player. I remember at that time, Barcelona would have probably been nailed on. They'd have probably been odds on for the Champions League that year. The best team I have ever seen in my lifetime. Obviously, I'm not that old. Would you agree? Best team?
Yeah, probably best team ever, I'd have said, yeah.
Yeah, at that time, they would have had, I think Zlatan was at the club then. They had, obviously, Messi, Bojan, Keita, the 3 midfield that you haven't got to go into. They had depth all over the place. David Villa, was he at the club then?
2010, no. No,
he
wasn't, no.
Following summer would have been, yeah? Okay. Cambiasso marshalled that midfield, defended for probably 180 minutes in that,
over the 2 legs,
defended for 180 minutes in that semi-final. Barcelona would have dominated the ball. Messi had been dropping in, and he was the one. He was the linchpin in that team. Now, Diego Milito scored 2 goals in the final. Eto'o was very good. They had good defenders. Moicon had a great season. But would they have won the Champions League without Esteban Cambiasso in that midfield?
A firm no, mate. A firm no.
Absolutely
Not a chance. And then thinking of other great sides, like you just mentioned, the Barcelona side, probably the greatest side ever. A couple of eras, it's been a lot of eras in my lifetime, different sides they've had, but I'll pick one. So, around the sort of 2011 to 2014 sort of period of time, Sergio Busquets.
Yeah.
That's a player that, especially here in England, because Cesc Fabregas was at Arsenal, and he was regarded as almost a Premier League great, if you like. You'd hear people in the pub, they're playing Busquets. Who's Busquets? Who is he? Why isn't Fabregas playing? It's such...
Yeah, you said that to me off air before, and I remember thinking it myself, thinking, why haven't they got Fabregas, Xavi and Iniesta midfield?
Yeah, well, this comes back to what I want to talk about all the time, mate, and I'm always banging on and on and on about it. Balance. Balance in a side is just... You can't measure balance, of course you can't, it's subjective, but you've got to get the balance right. Now, you look at Man United at the moment, just a very real, relative, right now example. Their 3 best midfielders are Donny van de Beek, Paul Pogba and Bruno Fernandes. There is not a chance I would put all 3 of them in the same midfield.
No.
I wouldn't do it.
You couldn't. Suicide, wouldn't it?
I wouldn't even contemplate it against the bottom sides in the league. But the point is, Busquets was the one in that side, but glued it all together. Now, Xavi was capable of playing deep line playmaker, if you like, but Busquets could do both. He could break up play. When the counter-attack was on, take a yellow card, little foul here and there. Very clever footballer. Very good on the ball. 1 and 2 touch. With his back to play, play the way he was facing. He wouldn't lose the ball. He could keep it in tight areas. What a player. Integral to Spain's success in 2010, 2012, absolutely integral to all of it. And I'll tell you what, if you're under any, if you're not sure if Sergio Busquets is a good footballer, have a look what Lionel Messi said about him. If you've ever read any of Lionel Messi's books, he rates him as one of the best midfielders he's played with. So obviously, yeah, he's only played at Barcelona. I appreciate that, yeah. But Argentina too. He said from day one when he came training with the senior side, Sergio Busquets, straight away, I just like that guy. Just what a player.
Yeah, and the fact that he still plays now. You're talking 10 years on from that team.
I will concede. I don't think he's the player he was
of course not.
But I'm just recognising without him, that success they had, it wouldn't have happened. You've got to remember, they had Yaya Toure at the time, always played holding. Sergio Busquets kept him out the side.
Yeah.
Funny, but we think of him as a holding player at Barcelona, but he was. But yeah, what a player. There are other sides too. Bring us on to the next one.
Yeah, ultimately he played in a position that is often referred to as the Makelele role. So only fitting that we mention Makelele. 2 title-winning seasons at Chelsea. Played for Real Madrid before that, I believe. Yeah, like I said, he had a role named after him. How good did he make that? That defensive unit that Chelsea had that was so successful. They conceded something like 15 goals
in a season.
I don't want to stick. I'm not trying to for 1 minute say that this player wasn't unbelievable in his own right. Surely he made John Terry look better as a player. He was never exposed for 1 moment.
Yeah, that's exactly the word. You've picked the right vocabulary there. Exposed. He was never left exposed. There was never a centre midfielder that could pick the ball up and run at him.
Never.
No.
And that might be a lot to do with John Terry's positioning. I'm not saying it isn't, but Makelele only helped.
I will just add, obviously we've mentioned Makelele for Chelsea and obviously Real Madrid. Makelele, just all-round career, what a player. But not just Makelele at Chelsea. If you have a look at all the Chelsea sides since Mourinho, the holding midfielders in which they've had there are unbelievable. So even players, they've always had a holding midfielder. They've always had someone breaking up the play and not allowing anybody to be exposed at the back, right? Michael Essien.
Yeah.
John Obi Mikel. Now, again, people will laugh. People will say, why is Mikel in the Chelsea side? We'll take him out the side and you'll see why he's in.
Yeah. He played a lot of football under a lot of managers as well. Even Ancelotti, liked him. He played a lot of football.
So again, it shows the importance of the holding midfielder. Chelsea, Matic, again, when he came in, revolutionised it. They won the league.
Yeah.
That signing, I would argue, was probably the reason they won the league.
Totally.
That signing there. So you're looking at Chelsea, there's 4 examples off the bat, really, of holding midfielders at Chelsea. And we've not even mentioned Kante.
No. Yeah.
So that's 5, right? Kante, like we said before, not strictly a holding midfielder, but point stands. You cannot be a top side without one.
Another example, one of my favourites, Michael Carrick at Man United, underappreciated in general, I think. Never played a lot for England, but within, on the continent, perhaps, if you asked a Xavi or Iniesta, they'd have probably really liked him as a player. Played probably 500 games for Man United for 5 years. I always said it. He is our most important player. When he is there, we are not the same team. He made us tick. He was always looking forward. He was a Rolls Royce in there, covered every blade of grass. Always in the right position, like we said, always looking forward and always there.
He was another one, though. He had both. He had the ability to break up play and play passes from deep. He could control a game. And it's so criminally underused for England. Because we come back to we spoke about before, Gerrard, Lampard, Scholes, why weren't they played in the midfield free? But yet again, Gerrard and Lampard in a midfield with Carrick. It's the same principle.
Yeah.
The other 2 would have had more licence. He would have sat and allowed the other 2 to express themselves. It's basic stuff, guys. You get Michael Carrick in that side, but Gerrard Lampard not performing for England, it's a myth.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
It's obvious. They'd have been the same players they were for their clubs.
Would you like to see Carrick at Liverpool under that period? Would you have took him there?
Well, listen, Liverpool were an interesting one because Liverpool sort of 2008, they had a very good side, probably until now the best side in my lifetime. And again, they had 2 holding midfielders at the time. So they had a midfield of Alonso and Mascherano holding. So those 2 holding and like Gerrard in front just behind Torres. And so the answer is at that point, no, because he wasn't needed. But any other point,
when Alonso moved on like a year later,
the perfect signing.
You would have fit perfectly in, wouldn't you?
Yeah, perfect signing, absolutely.
Again, another team. Another couple of examples. Bayern Munich won, 2 European Cups in the last 7 or 8 years. Got to 2 or 3 finals. Thiago recently signed for Liverpool.
Again, example of a deep lying playmaker if you want, but yeah, again, a deeper holding midfielder, controlling a game. Javi Martinez, how long has he been there?
Yeah, it gets forgotten about.
Integral to their success. 2012, obviously, they lost the final to Chelsea. Integral to it. Not losing the final, that was. I meant the season in general. 2013, they won everything.
Yeah.
Integral to it.
And he would have started in the final, I would have thought.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. And another one, he's played centre-back. He's done the lot. Mate, what a player. It's top sides need a top holding midfielder.
Finally, we have to mention Pirlo. A lot of people say their favourite midfielder in the last 20, 25 years. He seemed to be around forever. I strictly remember him playing against England in the Euros in 2012, and he had us on strings. He sat in front of the back 4, and he just took the mick. He just took the mick out of us.
Interestingly, do you know he was an attacking midfielder? Always an attacking midfielder. Ancelotti put him further back.
Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
What a genius.
Yeah.
It was, and it would have prolonged his career, I'm sure. Again, doesn't cover much ground. You wouldn't say, he's going to get in your face, make a lot of tackles, but he just orchestrated a game, just ran a game.
Example of a deep-lying playmaker, isn't he?
Yeah.
Much like Thiago, another one, attacking midfielder at Barcelona, moved back into the defensive role. Masterstroke.
Yeah, AC Milan, one of the best teams I've ever seen, that AC Milan team that actually lost to Liverpool in the final. On paper, and a lot, to watch, arguably, the second best team in my lifetime, probably that AC Milan team, with your likes of Kaká and Gattuso and Seedorf and Pirlo and Maldini. It was just unbelievable.
Stam, Cafu, yeah.
Again,
on a side.
Holding midfielder. It's so important to that team, making them tick, making them go. Would they have been the team they were? Probably nothing, they'd have still had a great team, but they wouldn't have been that team. And that's the point we're trying to make. Every single team needs that player. No matter how many good strikers you've got, you might have a great back 4, great midfielders. If you don't have that holding midfielder that breaks things up, runs a game, dictates the tempo of a game of football, you cannot be a top team. Again, just to finish, teams that haven't done it, teams that haven't been a top team, in my opinion, in our opinion, because they didn't have a top holding midfielder. PSG, I always felt they were a bit weak in that area of the pitch. Thiago Silva, for all his praise, I felt like he was never helped out to be this top centre-half that he was, because he never had a top holding midfielder in front of him.
Well, the thing is with PSG, they obviously had Marquinhos, but he ends up playing centre-back himself a lot of the time, you know?
Yeah.
So, again, I just feel like they are a Fabinho, a Fernandinho away from being Champions League winners. You know, I'm not saying...
They literally are.
They are, and look, there are so many good sides in Europe. PSG, Bayern Munich, Liverpool, Man City, they can't all... Only one team can win it. But if you have a Fabinho in that PSG side for 6 seasons, they will win one of those Champions Leagues in 6 seasons.
Yeah, 100%.
That is what they're missing. It's blatantly obvious that, you know, we've just concluded, we've just proved it. Top sides have to have a holding midfielder. And for me, that is why Spurs never won the league. They never had a top-class holding midfielder. They never had a top-class holding midfielder. That's where they were lacking.
See, no, I think Spurs had that top holding midfielder in Dembele. I thought he was their best player, their most important player for 3 years.
Dembele probably was their second most important player, but he wasn't a holding midfielder.
Well, he wasn't, but when Spurs were good, he played holding midfield.
He played, probably played 10% of his games for Spurs as a holding midfielder. But my point to you is, if they'd have had a top-class holding midfielder in the midfield with him, if they'd have had Kante in the midfield with Dembele, they would have won the league.
They would have, but again, I don't think Dembele was the... I thought Dembele had that role. I thought there was other issues that why they didn't win the league other than Dembele. And interestingly, and I've got a mate who's a Spurs fan. I remember having this conversation with him when they sold him for peanuts because his contract was up. That they will regret this. He is their most important player. They haven't replaced him, and they will regret this. Early 2019, the wheels come off, and I dare say it, if they'd have played in that final against Liverpool, it may have been a different game.
Well, I don't know. I think Liverpool would have had the beating of them either way. I can't. No, I'm not having that. But look, I do think he was one of their best players. Yes, he did play holding midfielder towards the last season. But my point is, they were a top-class holding midfielder away from winning titles, which they didn't have. Harry Winks, Eric Dyer, that's not top class.
Even
like we said earlier, if it's not top class, don't bother.
Exactly. And the players they've signed since Dembele, or to address that issue, Wanyama, not good enough.
Not good enough.
That Holberg, hard to knock him. He's done well since he's come in. Is he a top holding midfielder? No, he's not. He is not a top holding midfielder.
So on Dembele, I think it would be fair to suggest, since he's left, it's gone wrong for Spurs, hasn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, wheels have come off.
That's not a coincidence.
No, it's not. It could be seen a mile off. It was an unavoidable mistake they made. Unavoidable.
See, it's unforgivable, really. And who made the decision? Was it Levy? Was it Pochettino?
I'm not sure. I had the feeling that they offered him a contract too late, and it had already sort of run its course. But I'm not sure. But it was criminal. It was absolutely criminal. Well,
as far as I'm concerned, we have factually tonight proven to be a top team in the modern era. You have to have a top class holding midfielder. You can't just have a holding midfielder. That's not enough. It has to be a top class holding midfielder. And they are few and far between. Harry, thanks for joining me tonight, mate. Really enjoyed it.
Cheers, guys. Thanks for listening. Make sure you subscribe, and we'll see you next time on the Full On Football Podcast.